The next option is frizz. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and then we can take a look at the parameters. So generally what frizz is going to do is add some random direction to your hair based off of the root. So if you take a look at the preview, you'll see that with frizz on, the hairs get spread apart towards the tips, but if you look with it turned off, they manage to stay well clustered together. Now you can adjust the amount of frizz with the percentage here, and you can also change the variation. And so this is how much it can vary from this main value. You then have a scale X and a scale Y, and these two values here are going to control the amount of this actual direction change. So if you set these to something lower, the effects that you get are not going to be as drastic, but if you set it to something much higher, you get more drastic effects. Again, you have an amount slider which allows you to blend between having no frizz at all and 100% of whatever values you have set in here. Let's start by setting the amount to 0 and rendering. So you can see here, this is with the 0% frizz. Now we can set this back to 100% and render again. Now you can see here, with the high frizz values, the hairs really start to spread apart towards the tips. And this can be used to create a very soft looking fur like you see. Now there's also a curve that is controlling the amount of frizz from the root to the tip. So in this case, the root is getting 0% of these settings, and the tip is getting 100%. If we were to set the root to 100% and the tip to 0 and render again, you'll see that if we zoom in here, things really spread out towards the base of the hair, where there is a lot more frizz, and then tries to maintain its original styling towards the tips. So we can look at the tips being frizzed out, or the roots. Let's go ahead and set this back to the original curve, and we can also use a texture. So again, we'll go to the noise, set that to the noise there, use UV2D, we'll set this up to about 300%, and add some clipping in, and render. Now with that rendered out, we can take a look at the original one that had the frizzed tips. Let's just move those down a little bit. And then the one that is being controlled by a texture. So you can see here that there are definitely spots where there is no frizzing at the tip of the hair. And so really, the more that you start adding these subtle controls into your hair, the better it's going to start looking as well. The next option is kink, and this one is very similar to frizz, except it's going to add a bit more randomness along the actual hair itself. So again, you have an overall strength slider for the kink itself, and you'll see if you set this fairly high, you can get hair that is bunched up and messy. You can also add variation into that. And so this is how much it's going to vary from the base value that you set there. And there's also scale values. So with this one, higher scale values are going to give you a more apparent kink, whereas the smaller values are going to give you something closer to your original hair. You also have an amount slider, so again, this is going to take you from having no effect to the full effect, and you have a curve that controls the strength of the effect along the entire guide, from root to tip. So let's go ahead and add some scale onto the hair here for the kink, as well as increase the main kink value. And then we'll adjust the curve so that the kink is only going to happen from the root of the hair towards the tip, and then it smooths off. And if we need to, we can always add in some more control points there, just to get something that is a bit smoother and more predictable. Now we can go ahead and render, and with that finished, you can see the effects of the kink with the curve. Much like with the frizz, you can see that the hair towards the base is now more kinky, or kind of crumpled up, than the hair towards the tips. And if we look at our original render, which is this one here, and compare that, you can definitely see the change in the hair. And again, we have the option to control this with a image or shader as well. So with the kink now being controlled by a texture, you can see that we still do get areas where that is affecting, but it is being limited by the shader that we set. So here it is with no shader in the texture channel, and here it is with the noise shader. The next channel that we have in the hair material is for density. And what density is going to allow us to do is to control the density, or the hair count, of the hair on the surface. So density of 100% is going to be equal to whatever value you have set in the hairs. Now in this case it's 80,000. If I have a density of 50%, then I'm only going to be getting 40,000 hairs spread across the entire surface. Density levels is going to be based off of any sort of gradation that you have. You have the ability to control the amount of detail in that gradation. Texture is going to allow you to reference a image or shader, so we can set the density back to 100%, and then just like everything else, we can add in a noise shader, and choose the noise type, UV2D, set this to 300%, and add some clipping on there, and then render. So now you can see here from the render that we have a proper density for the hair where we have a white value, and then wherever it's black we get no hair or sparse hair. You can also see that it's not changing the length of the hair at all, and this is something it was doing for both the length channel and the scale channel. It's merely changing the density. So if we go back into our shader and adjust the low clipping so that it is not clipping anything at all, and we can even take this and set it to a dark gray instead and render, we have the ability to create sparse patches in the hair without actually removing all the hair completely.